Welcome to your Daily Revolution podcast. This is 6 Ways to Powerfully Raise Your Teenager, Part 2. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
My name is Setema, Gali, the founder and creator of the Prosperity Revolution, a global movement that helps you to get out of scarcity and into prosperity every single day. A movement where people have value, things do not, where money is a result of helping people, where you're rewarded for creating value for others, and where prosperity is not the result of luck, but a predictable steps and formulas, and where happiness is the ultimate goal.
Now that we've got these 6 things, so let's just back up the frame as you go get clear. And then number 1, go get on their side of the wall. How? Number 2, you got to understand perspective. Number 3, you got to ask powerful questions. Number 4, you got to listen to learn and understanding and listen to what's going on over there where you're not. Number 5, you got to be driven by love, deep love. And people say unconditional love. I'm like, look, real love is unconditional. So I don't even say that word. I'm like, it's love. Not judgmental love, not love with strings attached, just love. Like you really care for this person. And number 6, there's no judgment. Like they could say anything. Hey, Dad, I'll use some things from our experience. Hey, I did this drug, or I drank this thing, or I saw this on a computer, or I said this to this, and I'm like, okay. Cause see, the old me would be like, what? What are you thinking? How many times have we talked about this? Why? And if you ask questions like, why? Why do you do that? That's like a killer. Avoid those why questions. And instead of saying, well, why do you do that? You might slow it down, tone it down, and shift the kind of the context of it and say, well, what was it that kind of drove you to do that? And then shut up. Let them process and talk. Right? So now we've got those 6 things to parent. Now, let's jump into the next phase of this. The moment you can do those things and get on their side of the wall and really listen to them and really understand. Right now, there's 2 more things here. Right? I'll call them 7 and 8. Number 7 is like once you're on their side of the wall, once you're listening, once you're loving on them, you're not judging them. You've attempted to leave behind all of the things that you think are the truth and the only way. Then you got to attempt to do that. You got to leave that behind. Once you're on their side and they start to really open up, one of the greatest things you could do is help them, number 7, help them to be clear about what they want. Like I've coached thousands upon thousands of people, hundreds in our close groups, in our circle of champions, in our champions huddle. And these are adults. We're talking very successful and very wealthy financially and very fit people. And what happens is you'd be surprised how many people are not clear, how many people don't know what they want. And if that's happening with adults, you think that there might be a chance that your teenager might not know what they want. Like, my goodness, for all we know, they might just be trying to survive. They might be dealing with self-esteem issues or like they don't fit in issues or the comparison issues. This is one reason, like I'll tell you straight up, my kids don't have social media right now. Not yet. And I know people are like, oh, it's so good for them. Like, that's great. But in my heart of hearts, I'm like, what? Why? What's on social media that's so good that it's going to outweigh all the comparisons? So that's another conversation. So number 7, go help your son or daughter get clear. This means you've got to build some real trust with them so that they feel comfortable opening up. Again, if you're not judging them ever, and you're loving on them, and you're listening to them, and you're asking and listening to learn, and you're always respectful of their perspective because you're constantly on their side of the wall of perspective, trust is going to be built. Trust is going to be built. And as you say, you ask them questions to get them clear about what they want. My 2 younger sons, they seem pretty clear. My teenagers, he's just like, I don't know if he's afraid to tell us, or maybe he's just not there yet. But I'm constantly saying, son, have you thought about this? And then we share some personal stories, or we put them in front of other people, and we have great church leaders. Clarity's power. You know what's going to happen when your child gets clear, or any kind of clarity? What happens when your child gets really clear about what they want? And when your child begins to have desires and goals and outcomes, they are more likely to do the required work than if you're forcing them to try to go get good grades. So your job, in essence, right, your job is to try to figure out, how do I get my son or daughter to have a vision for their future? And again, this is not an overnight conversation. So number 7 is get clear. And then number 8, here's the fun part. And number 8 is principle number 10 inside of the 13 principles. So number 8 of this podcast, I said there'd be 6. Now there's really almost like 9 or 10. But number 8 is create agreements. Once your son or daughter and you have some real understanding and connection and like there's trust, the next best thing is to live in agreements and not expectations. That's principle 10 in the 13 principles. Agreements, not expectations. See, if you only have expectations with your teenager, you are going to be frustrated. The frustration and misery will never end. You're going to age really fast. And expectations are misery. It's resentments under construction. But an agreement is something that's clearly created, right? An agreement is very clear. What is going to happen? By when is it going to happen? Who's going to make it happen? And what, by when, by who, by how, how is it going to be done? And again, I could speak for 3-4 hours on this subject of agreements. Nonetheless, if you have agreements, so we have agreements with our sons. They know that homework's got to be done. There's grades that got to be met. And we've explained why. Give your kids the why behind the agreement. And know this with the agreements that you're making. It's not about you saying, do you agree to this? You got to go create this with them. And say, does that work for you, son? Or does it look like you can't do that? And they might even come up with the agreements. Well, Dad, how about this? See, again, if you're making the agreement from your side of the wall, not a good idea. But if you can make the agreement while you're next to them on their side, and they can clearly see this agreement, keeping this agreement, not only makes our home work, it makes my life better. And it leads me to the clear vision of what I want. Good example of this was I go back to my high school days. And a lot of my friends had jobs. They'd have a part-time job, and I didn't have a job. My job was I would get out of school, and I would go to the gym, and I would lift weights for 90 minutes, 4 days a week. And I played sports, and I was in student council, and my parents supported me because I told them, hey, I really want to get a scholarship. I got the scholarship because my parents supported me. Now, I've told my sons, hey, look, if you were not doing sports or music, really into it, then we go get a job and we learn that way. And they know that they've got to do chores and they've got to maintain a certain type of standard of grades. There's a lot of agreements we have. And when I say a lot, there's a handful. If they do this, then they get this. And look, you're going to want to go create those agreements with your child around the cell phones and social media. And it's not like we're emotional about it. We just say, look, if this is what happens. There's a consequence. And if you don't uphold the agreement, then you lose the privileges. That's how it goes. And we tell them why. And all of a sudden, when they lose privileges, we tell them why. And we have great conversation around it. And there's a lot of conversations in the car, at home. There's a lot of one-on-ones. There's a lot of listening. So that's number 8. Look, I got to add one more on here. Last thing, number 9. Don't be afraid to say you're sorry. If you mess up, if you lash out at your children, if you break trust, if you do or say something that's just really out of line because you're short on patience and you're inappropriate with your kids, right? You say something, you do something, you hurt their feelings, you joke, and yet it hurts them. Number 9, you go say sorry. And you powerfully apologize. I've had to get on my knees at night and just say, I'm so sorry, son. And they cried. I'm like, I cried too. I'm like, man, I didn't mean to do that. I remember one time I yelled at my oldest son about something. And I was in the wrong. I didn't have all the full facts. I didn't have full context. And so I went into his bedroom and he was crying. And I just sat on the bed and he came and I said, I'm so sorry, son. I was wrong. And I find myself probably once a month, at least once a month, apologizing to my sons. And again, not a lot, but just like once I was like, man, I was wrong on that one. That's my mistake, son. I'm sorry about that. You forgive me? And they're like, yeah, of course, Dad. See, then it makes it easier for them to say, hey, I messed up, Dad. I'm like, it's okay. And then I'm like, don't do that again, dude. And right, a little bit of joking and we try to keep things light. But there's some things to help you parent your teenager. Now, remember, okay, even if we're an adult in our mid-40s like I am, we're still like kids. We ain't got this thing figured out. And so I tell my kids often, I was like, we're not perfect, son. I'm learning just like you. So if you'll help me and give me some feedback on what really helps you, I promise I'll really listen and just keep trying to make our relationship better and have great talks. And it's amazing. Like if this podcast is being able to help you, then I invite you to share it and go put it into practice. Go get on your teenager side of the wall. Get like some perspective. Ask and listen. Love on them and stop judging them so harshly. Help them to be clear about what they want. Create and live in powerful agreements. Do what you said you would do for your children. Do it. Like really show up for them. Show up and be on their side. Show up and support them. If they make a mistake, correct it quickly. Be sharp in your correction so they know and tell them why it doesn't work, and then show forth greater love for them. Look, my friends, I promise, like our teenagers more than ever, they need us. It is a fierce, fierce war against our children with pornography, with there's so much evil and there's so much danger. There's so much garbage and filth. You have children taking their lives. You have children walking around with low self-esteem, no confidence. You have children like just lost and confused about who they are. Even though my kids go to school and have teachers and coaches, it takes a village. And so I'm very clear with my kids. A lot of conversations, a lot of listening. Like we really listen a lot. And even this morning, as I was shooting this podcast, my youngest came up to me, brought me one of the smoothies my wife makes. And I go, how was your day? And he's like, God, I had the worst dream. And he told me for like 90 seconds, almost 2 minutes, what his dream was. And he had this nightmare. And then he ended up at the sports place and then he couldn't win. And then he lost me and I got hurt. And I could tell he was frustrated and distressed. So he gave me a hug. We just hugged. Right? We just sat there and hugged and then gave me a kiss on my lips. And I listened to him. He's like, thanks for listening, Dad. I'm like, of course. Like, you're my guy. I love you. My teenager this morning, I called him and, I'm like, hey, I'm going to be late to pick you up. He's like, oh, it's okay. We're ready. I love you, Dad. I was like, I love you too. Man, tell your kids you love them. Hug them every day. Do you hug your kids every day? Like, if you're not hugging, you're like embracing them, touching them every day, giving them hugs, like holding their body close to yours, letting them feel warm embrace and touch and kisses and hugs. And again, whatever's my home, like, my sons still, they'll come lay by me. My youngest will lay on me. My 11-year-old try to lay on me. I'm like, dude, you almost 200 pounds. Get off. And they'll snuggle me. And I love it. Parents, we got a real duty here. Like we really got some work to do here with our children. And I'm clear that if we'll do our part and, again, just ask God to help us and guide us, He will. My friends, I appreciate you listening to this. These were some longer episodes, and it was needed because I know that there's children out there who need all of our help. It takes a village. So thank you for listening. And if this has made a difference for you, tag me, snapshot it, share it with somebody. Go share it with someone who's a parent of a teenager and I appreciate it. Have an amazing day, my friends. I'm out.
Let's go! This is your daily revolution. Live in prosperity, we show you how to do it. There's no luck about it, we got the strategic blueprint. This is your daily revolution. You already know. And if you don't, then check my resume. Turning pressure into possibilities every day. Y'all can win and live our unique purpose. We change our mindsets and put the work in. This is your daily revolution. Your daily revolution. Revolution. Your daily revolution podcast.